Testing, testing, 1, 2. The sound seems to be good. So, one final detail that I was going to do before that was, of course, I forgot to enable my model. And still, not too critical. It can be done in a matter of seconds right now. There we go. Can tag this through into writing and reading. I didn't even know such a tag existed under Twitch, so let's see here. Suppose this can be done either from... And again, I'm not exactly too familiar with how mobile dashboard works, so let's just do this from the browser window. Let's see, here it is. And instead of just chatting, it's going to be yep, there it is, writing and reading. And there we go. All good now, at least for the time being. And the final preparation, so that we are very much good to go. The hell is kind of that word, is it? Very much good to go. Who even speaks like that? Anyway. Yeah, looks like it is capturing properly. And there we go. So, good evening, afternoon, or whatever time of the day it is in your part of the world. And tonight, we're taking a bit of a diversion from our regular reading, in the sense that it's not going to be another VN or CYOA book. We're taking a bit of a step back in a more serious direction, and we'll be dealing with a book about a little bit of everything, let's put it that way, called The Dictator's Handbook: Why Bad Behavior is Almost Always Good Politics. I can assure you that this is a fascinating read, even though the book itself may be a little dated by this point in time, seeing as it was released in 2011, or was it 2012? But most of the points in that book still hold true, which I can confirm. Now let's also put on a bit of a soundtrack so that we are not completely without musical arrangements on this one. I think I know just the soundtrack that would be great for this kind of book. The first fucked up book since Bloodlands, huh? We'll see if that holds up still. Also, tone down the music, volume, and we can begin. To our dictators who have treated us so well, Arlene and Fiona. Also, first of all, of course, forward. What is important here is cash. A leader needs money, gold and diamonds to run his 100 castles, feed his 1,000 women, buy cars for the millions of bootlickers under his heels, reinforce the royal military forces, and still have enough change left to deposit into his numbered Swiss accounts. Mobutu Sese Seko of Zaire, probably apocryphal. Men at some time are masters of their fates. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings. William Shakespeare, Julius Caesar. Page 140 to 141. And with that, we can begin. Introduction. Rules to rule by. What remarkable puzzles politics provides. Every day's headlines shock and surprise us. Daily we hear of frauds, chicanery, and double-dealing by corporate executives, new lies, thefts, cruelties, and even murders perpetrated by government leaders. We cannot help but wonder what flaws of culture, religion, upbringing, or historical circumstance explain the rise of these malevolent despots, greedy Wall Street bankers, and unctuous oil barons. It is true, as Shakespeare's Cassius said, that the fault lies not in the stars but in ourselves, or more particularly in those who lead us. Most of us are content to believe that, and yet the truth is far different. Too often we accept the accounts of historians, journalists, pundits, and poets without probing beneath the surface to discover deeper truths that point neither to the stars nor to ourselves. The world of politics is dictated by rules. Short in the term of any ruler foolish enough to is the term of any ruler foolish enough to govern without submitting to these rules to live by. Journalists, authors, and academics have endeavored to explain politics through storytelling. They'll explore why this or that leader seized power, or how the population of a far-flung country came to revolt against their government, or why a specific policy enacted last year was reversed the fortunes of millions of lives. And in the explanations of these cases, a journalist or historian can usually tell us what happened to whom, and maybe even why. But beneath the particulars of the many political stories and histories we read are a few questions that seem to emerge time after time, some profound, some seemingly minor, but all nagging and enduring in the back of our minds. How do tyrants hold on to power for so long? I will play the Triunfo OST, Matt, don't worry. I reserved it for Chapter 1. And yes, this is the Tropical OST. You've guessed it correctly. Now, where was I? How do tyrants hold on to power for so long? For that matter, why is the tenure of successful democratic leaders so brief? How can countries with such misguided and corrupt economic policies survive for so long? Why are countries that are prone to natural disasters so often unprepared when they happen? And how can lands rich with natural resources at the same time support populations stricken with poverty? Equally, we may well wonder, why are Wall Street executives so politically tone-deaf that they dole out billions in bonuses while plunging the global economy into recession? Why is the leadership of a corporation on whose shoulders so much responsibility rests decided by so few people? Why are failed CEOs retained and paid handsomely even as their company's shareholders lose their shirts? Oh yes. In one form or another, these questions of political behavior pop up again and again. Each explanation, each story, treats the errant leader and his or her faulty decision-making as a one-of-a-kind situation. But there is nothing unique about political behavior. These stories of the horrible things politicians or business executives do are appealing in their own perverse way because they free us to believe we would behave differently if given the opportunity. They liberate us to cast blame on the flawed person who somehow, inexplicably, had the authority to make monumental and monumentally bad decisions. They are confident that we would never act like Libya's Muammar Gaddafi, who bombed his own people to keep himself in power. We look at the huge losses suffered under Kenneth Lay's leadership by Enron's employees, retirees, and shareholders and think we aren't like Kenneth Lay. We look at each case and conclude that they are different, uncharacteristic anomalies. Yet, they are held together by the logic of politics, the rules ruling rulers. The pundits of politics and the nabobs of news have left us ignorant of these rules. They're content to blame the doers of evil without inquiring why the worlds of politics and business seem to succor miscreants or to turn good people into scoundrels. That's why we're still asking the same old questions. We're still surprised by the prevalence of drought-induced food shortages in Africa 3,500 years after the pharaohs worked out how to store grain. We're still shocked by the devastation of earthquakes and tsunamis in places like Haiti, Iran, Myanmar, and Sri Lanka, and by the seemingly lesser intensity of such natural disasters in North America and Europe. We're still troubled by the friendly handshakes and winks exchanged between democratic leaders and the tyrants that they somehow justify empowering. In this book, we're going to provide a way to make sense of the miserable behavior that characterizes many, maybe most, leaders, whether in government or in business. Our aim is to explain both good and bad conduct without resorting to ad hominem claims. At its heart, this will entail untangling the reasoning and reasons behind how we are governed and how we organize. The picture we paint will not be pretty. It will not strengthen hope for humankind's benevolence and altruism. But we believe it will be the truth and it will point the way to a brighter future. After all, even if politics is nothing more than a game that leaders play, if only we learn the rules, it becomes a game we can win. To improve the world, however, all of us must first suspend faith in conventional wisdom. Let logic and evidence be the guide, and our eyes will be open to the reasons why politics works the way it does. Knowing how and why things are as they are is a first crucial step towards learning how to make them better. And let's see if I can make the music a little even more, rather even less. This should be alright. And with that we can move on to the next one. On the next item on our agenda, which is Bell's Bottomless Blues. In politics, as in life, we all have desires and contend with obstacles that keep us from getting what we want. A government's rules and laws, for example, limit what we can do. Those in power differ from the rest of us. They can design rules to their advantage and make it easier for them to get what they want. Understanding what people want and how they can get it go a long way to clarifying why those in power often do bad things. In fact, bad behavior is more often than not good politics. This dictum holds up whether one governs a tiny town, a mom-and-pop business, a mega corporation, or a global empire. Let's start with a tale of a small town's team of seemingly greedy, grasping, avaricious louts so that we can appreciate how the world looks from a leader's perspective. And yet, it's vital that we remember that this is a story about politics, not personality. Whether we're discussing a cabal of corrupt reprobates or not, what really matters is that these are people who value power and recognize how to get it and keep it. Soon enough we will come to appreciate that this small tale of miserable conduct recurs at every level of politics and corporate governance, and that there is nothing out of the ordinary in the extraordinary story of Bell, California. Robert Rizzo is a former city manager of the small town of Bell, population about 36,600. Bell, a suburb of Los Angeles, is a poor, mostly Hispanic and Latino town. Per capita income may be as low as $10,000 or as high as $25,000, estimates vary, but either way it is way below both the California and national average. More than a quarter of the town's hardworking people live below the poverty line. Life is not easy in Bell. Still, it is a community that takes pride in its accomplishments, its families, and its prospects. Despite its many challenges, Bell consistently outperforms other California communities in keeping violent crime and property crime below average. A cursory glance at Bell's official website suggests a thriving, happy community brimming over with summer classes, library events, water play, and fun-filled family trips. And Bell seems to be a concerned community too. The town offers, for instance, housing and urban development grants to pay for repairs to single-family homes, provided certain basic residency and income requirements are met. Robert Rizzo, in his job for 17 years, must surely look back on his time as city manager with pride. In 2010, Bell's then-mayor, Oscar Hernandez, later jailed on corruption charges, said the town had been on the verge of bankruptcy in 1993 when Rizzo, also ultimately charged with corruption, was hired. For 15 consecutive years of Rizzo's leadership, up until he stepped down in 2010, the city's budget had been balanced. Hernandez credits Rizzo with making the town solvent and helping to keep it that way. That, of course, is no mean feat. Surely he and the town leaders with whom the workers were deserving of praise and tangible rewards for their good service to the people of Bell. Behind the idyllic facade, however, lies a story that embodies how politics really works. You see, Robert Rizzo, hired at $72,000 a year in 1993, and in his job for 17 years, before being forced to step down in the summer of 2010, at the end of his tenure was earning a staggering $787,000 per year. Let's put that into perspective. If his salary had just kept up with inflation, he would have made $108,000 in 2010. He made 7 times more. During long years of low inflation, his salary went up at an annual, compounded rate of more than 15%, almost exactly the return promised by Bernie Madoff, the master Ponzi schemer, to his hapless investors. How does Rizzo's managers pay compared to other responsible government jobs? The President of the United States is paid $400,000. The Governor of California's salary is just over $200,000. The mayor of Los Angeles, just a hop, skip, and a jump from Bell, is paid only a bit over $200,000, for instance. To be sure, Robert Rizzo was not even close to the highest paid public employee in California. That distinction, as in most states, went to the coach of a university football team. UC Berkeley's coach earned about $1,850,000 in 2010. But then he probably brought in a lot more revenue than Mr. Rizzo. Also, a quick reminder, as pointed out in here, these are all, of course, 2011 prices. And yes, my dog really is going crazy out there, but such is such, as they say. Now, Robert Rizzo was indeed credited with doing a good job for Bell, but was it really that good? It seems that he was the highest paid city manager in the entire United States, or at least until we discover another Bell. The natural thought is that somehow Robert Rizzo must have been stealing money, dipping into the proverbial cookie jar, taking funds that were not rightfully and legally his, or at least doing something or other that was immoral and illegal. The California Attorney General and Democratic candidate for governor at the time of the Bell scandal in the summer of 2010, Jerry Brown, promised an investigation to find out if any laws had been violated. The implicit message in his action was clear enough. No one would pay a small-town city manager nearly $800,000 a year. The truth, however, is quite a bit more complicated. The actual story is one of clever and reprehensible political maneuvering implicitly sanctioned by Bell's voters and the city council members who represent them, supplemented only by a touch of larceny. Cities comparable to Bell pay their council members an average of $4,800 a year, but 4 of Bell's 5 council members received close to $100,000 a year through the simple mechanism of being paid not only their minimal base council salaries, but also nearly $8,000 per month to sit on city agency boards. Only poor councilman Lorenzo Velez failed to reap such rewards. Velez apparently received only $8,076 a year as a council member, approximately equal to what his fellow council members were getting each month. How can we possibly explain these disparities, let alone the outrageous salaries and pensions provided by not only to Mr. Rizzo, but also to the assistant city manager and Bell's chief of police, all subsequently jailed on corruption charges, as per usual? The answers lie in a clever manipulation of election timing. The city's leaders ensured that they depended on very few voters to hold power and to set their compensation. To see how a poor community could so handsomely reward its town leaders, we must start with the 2005 special election to convert Bell from a general city to a charter city. What you may well ask between yawns is the difference between a general city and a charter city? The answer is day and night. Decisions are made in the open daylight in general cities and often in secret behind closed doors in charter cities. While a general city's governing system is dictated by a state or federal law, a charter city's governance is defined by, well, as you would expect, its own charter. The California legislature decided in 2005 to limit salaries for city council members in general cities. No sooner did the state legislature move to impose limits than creative politicians in Bell, some allege Robert Rizzo led the way, found a way to insulate themselves from the whims of those sent to California's state capital, Sacramento. A special election was called, supported by all 5 council members, to turn Bell into a charter city. The selling point of the change to charter city was to give Bell greater autonomy from decisions by distant state officials. Local authorities know best what is right for their community, more so than distant politicians who are not in touch with local circumstances. Or at least so the leaders of Bell, California, argued. Special elections on technical decisions, to be a charter city or to remain a general city, are less than captivating to the general voter. Of course, if the decision had been made in the context of a major national or even statewide election, the proposition would likely have been scrutinized by many prospective voters, but as it happens, surely by political design, the special election associated with no other ballot decisions attracted fewer than 400 voters, 336 in favor, 54 opposed, in a town of 36,000 people. And so the charter passed, placing within the control of a handful of people the right to associate city revenues and form the city budget, and to do so behind closed doors. As best as one can tell, the charter changed nothing else of consequence concerning Bell's governance. It just provided a means to give vast discretion over taxing and spending decisions to a tiny group of people who were, as it happens, making choices about their own compensation. Lest one think the council members were stupid as well as venal, it is worth noting how clever they were in disguising what they had done. Should anyone care to ask a city council member's part-time salary, any councilman or councilwoman could say openly and honestly that they were each paid just a few $100s a month, a pittance for their services. As we have already seen, the bulk of their pay, the part denied to Lorenzo Velas, was for participation on city agency boards. That, as it turns out, may ultimately have been their Achilles heel. As of this writing, let's see. There, as of this writing, all of the principal players in Bell's scandal had been jailed, but not for their lavish salaries. As reprehensible as these may have been, it seems they were perfectly legal. No, they were jailed for receiving payments from meetings that allegedly never took place. It seems they collected a lot of money while overlooking their obligation to actually attend committee meetings. This is to say that the well-paid managers of Bell may end up falling victim to what one might describe as a legal technicality. Outrageous salaries were okay, but getting paid for attending meetings while being absent from them was not. We cannot help but wonder how many government officials are held to that standard. How many senators and representatives, for instance, draw their full salaries while skipping meetings of the Senate or House so that they can raise campaign funds, give speeches, or go on boondoggles? You may well wonder how a little town like Bell could balance its budget. Or what of Mr. Rizzo's significant accomplishments while paying such high salaries? Indeed, we anticipate the high probability that once Bell's governance is cleaned up, its spending will involve indebtedness rather than a balanced budget. Remember, the town's leaders got to choose not only how to spend the money, but also how much tax to levy. And did they ever tax their constituents? Here's what the Los Angeles Times reported about property taxes in Bell. Bell's rate is 1.55%, nearly half again as much as those in such affluent enclaves as Beverly Hills and Palos Verdes estates and Manhattan Beach, and significantly higher than just about everywhere else in Los Angeles County, according to records provided by the County Auditor Controller's Office at the Times' request. That means that the owner of a home in Bell, with an assessed value of $400,000, would pay about $6,200 in annual property taxes. The owner of the same home in Malibu, whose rate is 1.10%, would pay just $4,400. In plain and simple terms, Bell's property tax was about 50% higher than nearby communities. With such high taxes, the city manager and council certainly could pay big salaries and balance the budget, all the while enriching themselves and their key cronies. Now that we have Bell's story, let's look at the subtext. In the city, council members are elected, although their election was not contested for many years before 2007. That means that council members are beholden to the voters, or at least the voters whose support was needed to win office. Before 2007, that was hardly anyone, since elections were not contested. Since 2007, as it turns out, even with contested elections, it still took very few votes to win a council seat. For instance, Bell had about 9,400 registered voters in 2009, of which only 2,285, that is, very close to 25%, 24.3 for being specific, turned out to vote. Each voter could cast a ballot for 2 candidates for city council out of the 6 candidates seeking that office. The 2 winners, Luis Artiga and Teresa Jacobo, received 1,201 and 1,332 votes respectively, out of 2,285 votes that were cast. But they didn't need that many votes to win. Speaking generously, the election was achieved with supportive votes from only about 13% of the registered electorate. We say speaking generously because to get elected in the city council in 2009, all that was necessary was to have one more vote than the third largest vote getter among the candidates. Remember, 2 were to be elected. So the number 3 candidate had just 472 votes. So, 473 votes, which is about 5% of the registered voters, just over 1% of the city population, and only about 1/5 of those who actually turned out to vote, is all that was needed to win election. Whatever the reason for the vote being divided among so many candidates, it is evident that election could be achieved with support from only a tiny percentage of Bell's adult population. This goes a long way to explaining the city government's taxing and spending policies. One thing we can be sure of, those on the city council could not have been eager for competing candidates or even fellow council member Velez to get wind of the truth about their compensation package. City manager Rizzo had to maintain the council's confidence to keep his job, and they needed his support to keep theirs. He could have exposed how deeply they were dipping into the public's hard-earned money, which would have sent them packing, as it now has. It is in this need for mutual loyalty that we see the seeds of Bell's practices and of politics in general. Rizzo served as the pleasure of the mayor and city council. They in turn served at the pleasure of a tiny group of Bell's citizens, the essential supporters among Bell's considerably larger prospective candidate electorate. Without the council's support, Rizzo would be, as he now is, out on his ear, albeit with a fabulous pension estimated at $6,500 per year. How best to keep their loyalty? That was easy. Promote the means to transfer great private rewards in the form of lavish compensation packages to council members. Of course, if all were being done in the open, or if Bell remained a general city subject to control over compensation from Sacramento, Rizzo could not have provided the means to ensure that he would scratch the city council members' backs and they his. When a leader's hold on power, his or her political survival depends on a small coalition of backers. Remember, the small percentage of voters needed to actually win a seat on the city council. Then providing private rewards is the path to long tenure in office. Mr. Rizzo kept his job for 17 years, after all. Furthermore, when that small coalition is drawn from a relatively large pool, just 5 council members, elected under a city charter ratified by only 354 voters out of a registered voter population in 2009, remember, of 9,395, then not only are the private rewards to the small coalition an efficient way to govern, but so much budgetary and tax indiscretion is created that the folks at the top have ample opportunity for handsome compensation, an opportunity that the city's top leadership did not fail to exploit. Bells presents a number of lessons to teach us about the rules to live by. First, politics is about getting and keeping political power. It's not about the general welfare of we the people. Second, political survival is best assured by depending on few people to attain and retain office. That means dictators, dependent on a few cronies, are in a far better position to stay in office for decades, often dying in their sleep, than are Democrats. Third, when the small group of cronies knows that there is a large pool of people waiting to replace them, the top leadership has great discretion over how much revenue is spent and how much to tax. All that tax revenue and discretion opens the door to kleptocracy from many leaders and public-spirited programs from a very few, and it means enhanced tenure in power. Fourth, dependence on a small coalition liberates leaders to tax at high rates, just as it was true in Bell. Taxing at high rates has a propensity to foment the threat of popular uprisings, just as happened in Bell. Of course, in Bell it was easy for the people to rise up and end Rizzo's rule because they have essential freedoms, the rights to free speech and assembly. We shall see how how the structure of government and the economy works explains variation in how many of these rights people have. This, in turn, accounts for whether the people take to the streets and whether they can succeed in orchestrating change, as we recently saw in some parts of the Middle East. I assume they're talking about the Arab Spring, or remain oppressed, as we saw in others. We will see that Bell's story offers a nearly perfect script for how to govern when the hold on office depends on very few people, especially when they are selected from among many. The politicians of Bell intuitively understood the rules of politics. Leaders who follow these rules faithfully truly can stay on top without ever having to do the right thing, quote-unquote, for their subjects. The people governing Bell clung to power for a very long time before probes from outside uncovered their means of holding onto office. As we will see, what works for those at the top usually works against those at the bottom, hence our shock and surprise at headlines of the misdoings of so many in high positions. The way places like Bell are governed, and that is the way most places and most businesses are governed, assure the bell bottom blues. One important lesson we will learn is that where politics are concerned, ideology, nationality, and culture don't matter all that much. The sooner we learn not to think of utter sentences such as the United States should do, or the American people want, or China's government ought to do, the better we will understand government, business, and all other forms of organization. When addressing politics, we must accustom ourselves to think and speak about the actions and interests of specific, named leaders, rather than thinking and talking about fuzzy ideas like the national interest, the common good, and the general welfare. Once we think about what helps leaders come into and stay in power, we will also begin to see how to fix politics. Politics, like all of life, is about individuals, each motivated to do what is good for them, not what is right for others. And that surely is the story of Robert Rizzo of Bell, California. Yeah, Libya and Syria are doing super good right now. Or at least they were doing okay back in 2011. And I think I'm gonna crack me a can of some liquid death. And by liquid death I mean an energy drink. And we can continue on after I take this sip. Don't worry about it. Now, where were we? As Robert Rizzo's story highlights, politics is not terribly complicated. But by the same measure, history's most revered political philosophers haven't explained it very well. The fact is, people like Niccolo Machiavelli, Thomas Hobbes, James Madison, and Charles Louis de Secondat, that is, Montesquieu, not to forget Plato and Aristotle, thought about government mostly in the narrow context of their times. Hobbes sought the best form of government. His search, however, was blinded by his experiences of the English Civil War, the rise of Cromwell, and his fear of rule by the masses. Fearing the masses, Hobbes saw monarchy as the natural path to order and good governance. Believing in the necessary benevolence of an absolute leader, the Leviathan, he also concluded that no king can be rich, nor glorious, nor secure, whose subjects are either poor or contemptible, or too weak through want or dissension to maintain a war against their enemies. Taking a bit of liberty with Hobbes' more nuanced philosophy, we must wonder how Robert Rizzo, by Hobbesian lights, could grow so rich when his subjects, the citizens of Bell, were so demonstrably poor. Machiavelli, an unemployed politician/civil servant who hoped to become a hired hand of the Medici family, that is perhaps the Robert Rizzo of his day, wrote The Prince to demonstrate his value as an advisor. It seems the Medicis were not very overly impressed. He didn't land the job. He had, we believe, a better grasp than Hobbes on how politics can create self-aggrandizing practices, such as that were expressed in Bell half a millennium later. Writing in The Discourses, Machiavelli observes that anyone seeking to establish a government of liberty and equality will fail, unless he withdraws from that general equality a number of the boldest and most ambitious spirits, and makes gentlemen of them, not merely in name, but in fact, by giving them castles and possessions as well as money and subjects, so that surrounded by these he may be able to maintain his power, and that by his support they may satisfy their ambition. I grew up in a town that's like a 40-minute drive from where I live. That's fascinating. Fascinating indeed. I think the previous president of my country grew up in my hometown, but he never seems to view that fact with any sort of media relevancy. But I digress. Robert Rizzo might have done well to study Machiavelli as the best source of his defense against public opprobrium. He maintained his power for long years by satisfying the ambition for wealth and position of those loyal to him on Bell's city council, and they really were the only people whose support he had to have. James Madison, a revolutionary trying to bring his brand of politics into power, was, like Hobbes, looking a revolution in the face. Unlike Hobbes, however, Madison actually liked what he saw. In Federalist 10, Madison contemplated a problem that was to bedevil the citizens of Bell a quarter of a millennium later. Whether small or extensive republics are most favorable to the election of proper guardians of the public weal, and it is clearly decided in favor of the latter. His conclusion, not easily reached as he was fearful about tyranny of the majority, is close to what we argue is correct, although, as always, the devil is in the details, and Madison, we believe, fell a bit short on the details of good governance. In describing a that happens sometimes. Anyway. In describing a republic as large or small, he failed to distinguish between how many had a say in choosing leaders, and how many were essential to keeping a leader in place. The two, as we will see, can be radically different. Madison's view was at odds with that of Montesquieu, who maintained that in a large republic, the public good is sacrificed to a thousand views. It is subordinate to exceptions, and depends on accidents. In a small one, the interest of the public is easier perceived, better understood, and more within the reach of every citizen. Abuses have a lesser extent, and of course are less protected. Not so in Bell, and in Bell we trust. For Montesquieu, the Enlightenment, the new Cartesian thinking, and the emerging constitutional monarchy of Britain all combined to simulate his insightful ideas of political checks and balances. Through these checks and balances, he hoped to prevent exactly the corruption of public welfare that the charter city election of Bell foisted on its citizens. Of course, the option of forming a charter city was motivated, in theory, exactly by a quest for checks and balances on the authority of California's state legislature. But the electoral public in the charter city special election was a meager 390 souls, and even in Bell's contested election before the scandal, fewer than a quarter of registered voters, themselves only a quarter of the city's population, bothered to vote. That's not enough to prevent the very corruption Montesquieu hoped to avoid. Now, there is no doubt that Montesquieu, Madison, Hobbes, and Machiavelli were very clever and insightful thinkers, and surely brighter than us. However, they got an awful lot of politics wrong simply because they were coping with momentary circumstances. They were looking at but a small sample of data, the goings-on surrounding them, and bits of pieces of ancient history. They've also lacked modern tools of analysis, which we luckily have at our disposal. Consequently, they leapt to partially right but often deeply wrong conclusions. In all fairness to these past luminaries, their shortcomings often have to do with the fact that besides being bound by their then-present contexts, these thinkers were also caught up in the big questions. What the highest nature of man ought to be, or what the right state of government really is, or what justice truly means in political sense. This short-sightedness extends not only to history's legends in political thought, but also to contemporary thinkers like Jürgen Habermas, Michel Foucault, and John Rawls, thinkers who someday may be viewed in the same light. God, I hope not. The big questions of how the world ought to be are indeed important, but they're not our focus. Questions of philosophical values and metaphorical abstractions, these simply don't apply to the view of politics that we'll present in the pages ahead. We do not start with a desire to say what we think ought to be. It is hard to imagine that anyone, including ourselves, cares much about what we think ought to be. Neither do we exhort others to be better than they are. Not that we do not hope to find ways to improve the world according to our rights. But then we believe that the world can only be improved if first we understand how it works and why. Working out what makes people do what they do in the realm of politics is fundamental to working out how to make it in their interest to do better things. The modern vernacular of politics and international relations, from balances of power and hegemony to partisanship and national interest, is the stuff of high school civics and nightly news punditry. It has little to do with real politics. And so, you may be delighted or disappointed to hear that this particular book of politics is not concerned with any of this. Our account of politics is primarily about what is, and why that is. In this book, we hope to explain the most fundamental and puzzling questions about politics, and in the process give us all a better way to think about why the worlds of rulers and subjects, of authorities and rights, of war and peace, and in no small way of life and death, all work in the ways that they do. And maybe, just maybe, from time to time we will see paths to betterment. The origins of the ideas developed here came years ago during heated lunchtime discussions between one of the authors of this book, Bruce Bueno de Mesquita, and the co-author of many earlier books, Randolph M. Siverson, now Professor Emeritus at the University of California, Davis. While munching on burritos, Randy Siverson and Bueno de Mesquita discussed a rather basic question. What are the consequences for leaders and their regimes when a war is lost? Oddly, that question had not been much addressed in the copious research on international affairs, and yet surely any leader would want to know before getting involved in a risky business like war what was going to happen to him after it was over. This question hadn't been asked because the standard ideas about war and peace were rooted in notions about states, the international system, and balances of power and polarity, and not in leader interests. From the conventional view of international relations, the question just didn't make sense. Even the term international relations presumes that the subject is about nations rather than being what about Barack Obama or Raul Castro or any other named leader wants. We so easily speak of United States' grand strategy or China's human rights policy or Russian ambitions to restore Russia to great power status, and yet, from our point of view, such statements make little sense. States don't have interests. People do. Amidst all the debate about national interest, what did President Obama fret about in formulating his Afghan policy? If he did not announce a timetable for withdrawal from Afghanistan, he would lose support from his democratic, not his national, his democratic electoral base. President Kennedy similarly fretted that if he took no action in what became the Cuban Missile Crisis, he would be impeached and the Democrats would pay a heavy price in the 1962 midterm election. National interest might have been on each of their minds, but their personal political welfare was front and center. The prime mover of interests in any state, or corporation for that matter, is the person at the top, the leader. So we started from this single point. The self-interested calculations and actions of rulers are the driving force of all politics. The calculations and actions their leader makes and takes constitute how she governs, and what for a leader is the best way to govern. The answer to how best to govern, however, is necessary first to come to power, then to stay in power, and to control as much national or corporate revenue as possible along the way. Why do leaders do what they do? To come to power, to stay in power, and to the extent that they can, to keep control over the money. Building on their lunchtime question about leaders in war, Randy and Bruce wrote a couple of academic journal articles in which they looked at international relations as just ordinary politics in which leaders, above all else, want to survive in power. These articles caught on quickly. Researchers saw that this was a different way to think about their subject, one tied to real people making real decisions, in their own interest, rather than metaphors like states, nations, and systems. It seems obvious now, but among the dominant realist school of international relations, this is still heresy. But Siverson and Bueno de Mesquita also saw that the theory could be stretched across a bigger canvas. Every type of politics could be addressed from the point of view of leaders trying to survive. The idea that the canvas was that big was scary. It meant trying to recast everything, or nearly everything we knew or thought we knew about politics in a single theoretical whole. It was a humbling moment, and Bueno de Mesquita and Siverson felt in need of help. Enter James D. Morrow, now professor at the University of Michigan, but back then a senior research fellow at Stanford's Hoover Institution, where Bueno de Mesquita was also based, and Alastair Smith. And so a foursome was born, sometimes affectionately known as BDMS. Together we wrote a thick, dense technical tome called The Logic of Political Survival, as well as a long list of journal articles that remain the foundation of this translation of our ideas into an account that we hope anyone can follow, argue with, and maybe even come to accept. Today, the theory behind this body of research has inspired many spin-off studies by us and by other researchers, theoretical expansions and elaborations by us and by others, and some lively debate, and no shortage of controversy as well. Using this foundation, we look at politics, the choices of public policies, and even decisions about war and peace as lying outside of conventional thinking about culture and history. It also means that we put ideas of civic virtue and psychopathology aside as central to understanding what leaders do and why they do it. Instead, we look at politicians as self-interested louts, just the sort of people you wouldn't want to have over for dinner, but without whom you might not have dinner at all. The structure of the book is simple. After outlining the essentials of ruling in Chapter 1, each subsequent chapter will probe a specific feature of politics. We'll assess why taxes are higher in many poorer countries than in rich countries, or why leaders can spend a fortune on the military and yet have a weak and almost useless army when it comes to the national defense. Together, the chapters will detail how the political logic of political survival, the rules to rule by, connects dots of political consequences across the widest canvas imaginable, deepening our understanding of the dynamics of all rulers and their populations. It is because of this capacity to connect the dots that many of our students have called our list of rules to rule by the theory of everything. We are content to codify it simply as the Dictator's Handbook. We fully admit that our view of politics requires us to step outside of well-entrenched habits of mind, out of conventional labels and vague generalities, and into a more precise world of self-interested thinking. We seek a simpler and, we hope, more compelling way to think about government. Our perspective, disheartening though it may be to some, offers a way to address other facets of life than just government. It easily describes businesses, charities, families, and just about any other organization. We're sure many readers will be comforted to have confirmation that their companies really are run like tyrannical regimes. All of this may be sacrilege to some, but we believe that, in the end, it's the best way to understand the political world and the only way that we can begin to assess how to use the rules to rule by to rule for the better. If we are going to play the game of politics, and we all must from time to time, then we ought to learn how to win the game. We hope and believe that that is just what we all can take away from this book. How to win the game of politics and perhaps even improve the world a bit as we do so. And that was our introduction to this book. Hopefully, you enjoyed it as much as I did. Now, as for why we are not continuing any further at this point in time, I've decided to divide it chapter by chapter, and I am certain that the introduction deserved to be its own chapter. Well, and also because I didn't get the chapter 1 ready in time. So we can continue with that on the next week. Also, let's see here. Sometimes increased level of alert in my area due to drones. What else? Ah well, I'll survive. I always do. Technically, I was not ready. But hey, the question still stands. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And just to give you a preview as to what else we are going to be dealing with at this point, let me pull up the... what was it? Let me pull up the table of contents of what we'll go through in this book. Let me just go back a little bit. And there. We got a lot of stuff to cover ahead, so keep that in mind. Chapter 1, the rules of politics. Chapter 2, coming to power. Chapter 3, staying in power. Chapter 4, steal from the poor, give to the rich. Chapter 5, getting and spending. Chapter 6, if corruption empowers, then absolute corruption empowers absolutely. Chapter 7, foreign aid. Chapter 8, the people in revolt. Chapter 9, war, peace, and world order. And Chapter 10, what is to be done. As you can see, we've got fruitful 10 weeks ahead of us. I'll see if I can cram all of these chapters into a standard 2-hour long stream, or if we'll have to extend these. So if we have, I do hope you'll stick around for much longer than that. And I should have probably mentioned beforehand that this stream will be a little less in time length because of introduction not being as long as a regular chapter. But I hope, once again, you've liked what you've heard and will come back for more. Now, while we're at it, how about we do something else? And by something else, I of course... oh, I got reminded of something very, very funny, so give me a second and I'm gonna pull it up, because this is... just being reminded of this got me laughing like I hadn't laughed for a couple of months by this point in time. Let's see where it was. And it was right here. Oh, and as a sweet little addendum to Robert Rizzo's case, article from 2014, which I was going to insert sometime during the introduction. The man was sentenced to 33 months in federal prison on tax fraud charges. Robert Rizzo, the man who became infamous in the City of Bell corruption scandal, was sentenced yesterday to 33 months in federal prison on tax fraud charges. Oh, and also, let's see here. Rizzo admitted in his plea agreement that he used a RARI account to pay for more than $80,000 in personal expenses in 2009 and $120,000 in construction work on his residence in Huntington Beach in 2010. So yes, there definitely were villas. And the court also told him to pay off at least a portion of the expenses. See, $255,984 in restitution, a figure that equals the amount of unpaid taxes directly attributable to the defendant. Now, back to the meme that made me laugh today, because I remember it exists.
Kansas don't know how to do no hot wings. Kansas.
Oh, I apologize, Kansas. It's time to reach for that jug. You lied to me. Get that rabbit.
Oh, you
No, DJ, I did not forgot something. I was going to ping you tomorrow. I was going to do an actual gaming stream of Mechanicus. So no worries about that. But that was a nice diversion. You know what, while we are at it, might as well quickly play something a little, but I'll have to decide as to what that something will be. So give me a second while I contemplate the available options. And that should be... Ah, there we go. How about a little bit of Brigador? You all love Brigador. We all love mechs here, don't we, folks? We all love them. Let me, of course, launch the game first, and then we can get in on the action. Not even Mech Slopa. Mech Sola. There we go. And yeah, I will allow the main team to play out. Won't even try to tone it down. Maybe a little. While I change the... what should I call it? The stream topic. That's what I was gonna say. Well, you know what they say, great leader is dead, so an Aubrey must fall, and welcome back, Brigador. I'll go for something short. Now, don't look at that, I don't have that many pilots unlocked in here yet. That's because I had most of the stuff unlocked over on my laptop. And since we're not on laptop, we might as well do it for something else. Like, oh, Evgenia saying, my beloved. Love me the nerd girl. And then we can go for the, no, not the Preacher, the Belter. Okay, secondary, can't go wrong with my voice. Special in grenade and operation. Let's look at something easier, like Odyssey. Now you get to see the lengths of my depravity. And by depravity I mean that I got claws for hands. Ah, orbits, eh? Well, we're just very politically motivated citizens here. Surprise, however. Some people just are all too eager to throw their lives away. And I'm not talking about infantry, or rather, just infantry. I'm talking about these guys too. Shall we? Of course. I really hope that Brigador Killers is as good as they say, because from what I've heard people describing the itch alpha version, it is pretty good. It's just that I am poor and cannot afford to buy it at the moment, but hopefully things change in the coming months. Once I hit that final stretch goal of 5 subscribers and can apply to Twitch affiliate, maybe, just maybe, things will change. I hold my breath on that one. A man can dream, after all. A man can dream, and that the man will dream unless told otherwise. Hey, if I needed your commentary, I would have asked. Speaking of, if you can't afford any commentary, or rather would like to offer any commentary, I have some of the affiliate hunters to assist you, my friend, and that is very much appreciated, even if it came at not exactly the time I was considering it, but I thank you nonetheless. And I will also try to pop into your streams whenever I can. And not just be a silent viewer, but actively engage with whatever you're doing. Be it Stellaris modding or something else. Now what else do we need? Just one more orbital gun to destroy and all those sweet substations. I will say that the Prowler is perhaps one of the most liked tanks on my end. Got that right combination of speed and power. The music is overpowering my voice, huh? Alright, I think we'll have to tone it down a little bit more then. from 25, or rather the music itself, to 25. Hopefully this should be good enough. Let me know if it's still too loud. But the music is good, I'll tell you this much. That's better, very good. And you are not welcome here. Goodbye. Give me your lunch money, nerd. Because I heard vague mentions of Stellaris, and that's it. Huh. Well, I was talking more in context of you streaming Stellaris mods. That's one of the things. If I were to get on the Stellaris train at some point, I will first need to get through my friend Arma that wants me to stream more Hoi 4, and in fact stream Hoi 4 at all. And secondly, I'm not very familiar with Stellaris meta as it stands. Oh, and also I don't have any, or rather all of the expansion packs as it stands. There will be TFR stream when they release Ukraine content update. Charles, that's a given. You have my word on this. When you stream connection dip, understandable, Matt. Hopefully you'll be able to make it next week for chapter 1. And you two have fun. And now we can get out of here. Let's do funny shit. Possibly. Even though it's kind of hard to be intentionally funny. Which is why some people, like Gabby's Battle, tend to go for boy failure, I suppose. And yes, I won't forget to use the Triumph for Ost. I promise you that as much. Just do funny shit. We'll go for the Gasworks Turnpike next. And hopefully by now we'll be able to use our EMP grenade. How close am I to affiliate? Well, right now I am sitting at 45 subscribers. So to hit that sweet spot of 50, I need just 5 more people. Unless, of course, I once again forgot the numbers, and I've already hit the required ones. In which case, tee-hee, pero. Interest in playing JRPGs? Well, I am playing one on Saturdays, even though it's a Western JRPG as it stands. You've probably heard of that one. It used to be called the funniest game of 2008, called Penny Arcade Adventures. So that's a Toro, so... No, not a Toro. It was something else. But I blew it up anyway, as one should. I don't know if you have follower notifications up or not. I do have follower notifications. I've seen at least one follower notification pop up. It's just that sometimes I still am not completely sure what the hell am I doing. Persona 1, eh? Specifically 1. I sense a burning hatred for Persona 4 and maybe 5. And begrudging respect for Persona 3. But, as the witch Adria once said, I sense a soul in search of answers. And that phrase drove many a person insane with how frequently it was said. There we go. Just in case specifically like one? Maybe. I know a person that I follow and that by this point has most likely abandoned any and all hopes for the end money from Twitch, likes older Final Fantasy Tactics games. Or even Fire Emblem ones. Also give me a second. Because believe it or not, sometimes the bots do find their way to this channel, but are swiftly banned. There we go. One last depot, and we can get out of here. Persona 1 is only 30 hours or so. Oh. I will consider it then, heavily. Most likely it will require some type of emulator to get running, unless I am thoroughly mistaken, as I can be half of the time, but we'll see. There is always a possibility for everything. Finally know why bots wouldn't show up on mobile. Well, do tell you. Or rather, do tell me, because I can see them anyway. ESP emulator would work fine. Okay then. Hey, cut that shit out. Oh, you will not be summoning any reinforcements anytime soon, I guarantee you this much. You may have bitten off more than I can chew, but we can still get out of this one. There you go, there we go, that's what I like to see. And it's a picture we'll hopefully see many times over. Let's see, Bannervators get a special info box on Twitch that might obscure them on mobile. Maybe. I do see just a crossed out eye when it comes to people like those. Maybe that has something to do with them. Ah, you love to see it when you nail them with a collateral. Environmental destruction. No worse than in the upcoming Battlefield, if you ask me. Sometimes even better, because you're not paid by the blown up brick in Battlefield. And out of my sight, pretty boy. Now I guess I'm gonna have to saw through the structure to get to you. Unless this blows up. Not too threatening. Same goes for you. And there we go. That's all of the main objectives taken care of, but I want that paycheck. So we'll grab all of the other objectives too. No need to pigeonhole yourself, or rather, there is a need to pigeonhole yourself. After all, we are an elephant in the proverbial china shop. Was there a ball in a china shop? The point is, once again, being paid by the deconstructed brick. So act accordingly. No need to be discreet. There. We can now leave. Hey you, watch out! Now watch me skirting over that fuel line and not blow myself up in the process. And it was not a fuel line, so all is good. $8 million, baby. Now, what did he say about Sherman? Which one was that? Kind of forgotten, to be completely honest. So we're gonna go for the next best option, which is Johnny Five Aces. Empty Foxtrot comes later. After we're done with Johnny. For that one I'm thinking we can go for... where was it? Can't go wrong with a Canavan. Stick with a Belter and... I'm thinking Broiler. Yeah, he's still taking his depression nap. EMP grenade, and I'm thinking we go for the Great Outdoors. Pinyal Nova Security Corridor. Here I go. I will say that I'm not too big of a fan of AGRAVs, but maybe that's just because I am not that good when it comes to piloting them, so this will be a bit of a learning experience for all parties involved. You know, as per usual, Corvette vehicles are very flimsy, as one would expect. Hey, forgot to ask you. Keep your opinions to yourself. To be raised on my missions. Snitches get stitches after all. Oh, this'll wake them up. You get out of here with your arc rifles. However, anything we've forgotten that side? Just coming right up. It is very therapeutic, as many people have pointed out previously. And I will say that a good demolition derby is oftentimes all you need to relax after a stressful day at work. People that used to play flat out won't lie in that regard. Yeah, I'm thinking we can go from this direction and hit the other secondary objectives. Especially these. This one will of course require a bit of a personal touch. So. Anyone else looking for a fight? Don't think so. Oh, there is one more cannon we need to blow up, and a bit more of these bozos to send back home. Especially these mods, which we are going to style all over. There we go. Gimme your ammo, you little bitch. And you... And now I can get out of here. Even though... No, we are on the right way. That's where the last two... depots should be. Blast right through them. No how damage at all, just what I like to see. Either I am getting better at this, or the enemy waves are not that scary yet. Most likely the latter. But maybe a little bit of former too. Who knows? On to Waste Outflow Watershed. Nobody else here? Then out we go. Hello? Anyone home? Of course there gotta be. We are dealing with quarters after all. There's always somebody home on account of how many you are there. Yep, just as when you blow up the tents, there's gotta be some viscera flying out. You never forget this type of detail. Only because it's this tiny little tidbit that you carry on through with the rest of your day. You are not welcome here, so get out. Oh, that's quite a lot of you, however, still dealable with, because you are just mods. Mods are going to get mogged on. Styled, substance, tone, whatever. Whatever best applies to this kind of situation. No, not mods, mogs, M-O-G. I'll explain what that is after this particular run. Now I just need to be a little bit more careful. Like so. That one. Oh, that's no big deal. Got out of that one too. Anyone else? Of course there will be. Because once again, we are dealing with corvettes and there are always a lot of them. They're not as sturdy, but there is a lot of them. I hate repeating myself, but corvettes, lots of them. Popular uprising, something anarcho-syndicalism, as the game helpfully teaches us in the information about the corvettes. I didn't think I liked this laser shotgun a lot. I'm gonna be replacing it with something else, something a bit more my style. Either with something with more oomph or something with a higher rate of fire. There we go, that's the one. No, this is not a Kaiserreich reference. And I will flagellate you with my beard if you say it is. Hello, goodbye. You got everything. And then some. On to the final sector, Pembroke Outpost site. Sleeping. Wakey, wakey, it's time for school. Class is in session. I suppose you're right in that regard. It could be a TNO reference. Also, ouch, I missed with my EMP grenade on that one. Luckily, I can afford to make mistakes for a bit. Anyone else in here? Of course there are. There always are. Here you go. On the house. What a dancer you are. For it to be a TNO reference, I will have to remove anything interesting about itself. To an extent. That's all I'll say. So did you know the Germans actually lost the war? No, for that one they'll have to go first with Italy got mutilated victory 2.0. And they actually want to get rid of their colonial empire because Mussolini realized how big of a mistake it was. But now his Grand Council of Fascism is slowly turning against him, so he has no choice and wants to hope that Ciano will fix everything. Unless Barba decides to intervene. But we all know how that one goes. We all played the vanilla Italy timeline after all, haven't we? But I do remember the TNR devs also making a bit of a jab at them removing the Atlantropa. That one was a funny joke. Come and get me. Come on, come and get me. Whenever you want to. Come on, do it. Right here, do it. Jolly man. Wow. Big John. Come on, do it. Come on, kill me. Kill me now. And that was my best impression of Big John. Dave O'Shri, if you're hearing this, please hire me as a voice actor for New Blood. I will deliver only the finest quality shitpost, second only to Gianni. I guarantee you that. Hitting them in the flank almost always works, even if they pop shields. Yeah, the Castor Royal skit was something else. By skit I mean, I can't believe that actually happened. Oh, the dog is doing fine. She's just being over dramatic and or bored. She's a good girl. Cocker Spaniel. Not our first dog, believe it or not, because, what was it? Mom always wanted a German Shepherd. I will show a couple of pictures of her I took recently. She's an old girl, but she likes us to bits. She can be even a little bit of envious when I pet the cat, because she wants to be pet too, or even instead of a cat. She's clingy like that, but I love her nonetheless. But what was I going on about? Right. Thing is, Mom always wanted a German Shepherd, but we had no luck with German Shepherds on account of them either just meeting an unfortunate end or just not sticking around our neighborhood for too long. If I remember the details as to what happened to our previous German Shepherds, I will share that story. For now, however, you know what I'm focused on. That's all Captain's taken care of. Don't bump into that oil rig, and that one too. Environmental kills. That's something that Bulletstorm did right. Also, another little bit of interesting information about myself. I was never that good at shooters. But I like watching people play them. Especially if they're doing it good. But then again, I am not unique in that regard, am I? I was never that good at playing shooters, is what I meant. Before I got drowned out by this cacophony of gunfire and dog barks because my dog is bored and wants to speak with any of the neighbors that dare to listen to her. But then again, if you can hear me, that's great. I like being heard, and I like being understood and appreciated and a lot of other things in life. But that's turning into something else entirely. Let's pay for some lore. Which was somewhere over here, I believe. There, power suits. While we're miles ahead of the original Hardimans, the underlying principle of exosuit design remains the same. Lift heavy stuff, protect the driver. Most power suits are still open-faced, though of course, once hazardous materials and environments get involved, it's a different ballgame. The kettle-style enclosure first showed up in EVA hardsuits, but didn't make the jump to terrestrial variants until major vision and control issues got sorted out by the advent of cranial jacks, which is also the moment that R&D Money Pit finally produced something viable for the military. Early combat models varied widely in size and function, but shared the ungainliness endemic to first-generation hardware. Just as with tanks, took a few decades before power suits matured as a weapons platform and commanders figured out what to do with them. Most of this development predates the colonies, so now they can be found almost anywhere. Land, water, space, and supposedly falling through atmosphere if those reports about spacer drop suits are to be believed. What a fanciful fantasy. Price thing jokes aren't on the table just yet. Oh good, otherwise I wouldn't survive them. Especially the good boy jokes. But yes, as I promised. Here we go. Might as well grab something longer. And a spacer mech. I hear Widow is always a good choice. For the primary, we are of course gonna go with not Confessor, but Scimitar. Love me artillery. Or maybe, as per usual, the Confessor. It's always a good choice. No, Scimitar it is. As for the secondary, Maidois. You can't go wrong with that one. Again, EMP grenade, and for the operation, I am finally gonna go into something longer, which is gonna be Inner City. Good choice. This is gonna be fine. Citizens, you have nothing to fear but fear itself. And me. I fear myself on a daily basis. And I am the law. Law of the jungle. Any one of you saw George of the Jungle at some point in your lives? Apparently it also warranted an animated series at some point in life. Also, thank you kindly for disposing of yourself. Oh, I'm not afraid of trees, I'm more afraid of these little buggers. I see you there! And thank you, Tarot, for taking care of these vagrants. That's why I am keeping you around. Among other things. Well, you most likely are just a brain in a jar. Going through the motions, but I appreciate it nonetheless. After all, this is what we pay you for. But I don't think we pay you in particular. Hell, I don't think they pay me. No, of course they pay me. Otherwise, this would have been a whole different story. And I would have actually played Cruelty Squad, where I am billed for everything I destroy. Like this one. Yep. Give me your lunch money. Anything else we've forgotten to do? No, I don't think so. Just need to blast through these. We're golden. Absolutely. How many suicide bombers are there going after me? Lots of patriotic citizens in this area. Who would have guessed that? Not me, that's for sure. They take their patriotic duties seriously. In these conditions, everyone? No. One comm tower left, and then we can skedaddle. Skedaddle is a funny word. I think it also meant something else before it just became a synonym for get out. Like a specific action. Oh, that's a long line of vehicles. Not that it matters much by this point. Also, ow. One suicide bomber finally got me. But I'm still standing, and that's all that matters. Next, on to the new people. Now they gotta start ramping things up. In theory, we can at least say goodbye to suicide bombers. Oh, looks like this is a spacer neighborhood. Or at least it is now. We'll see how this situation develops. Maybe I'll return this neighborhood to its original owners, or maybe not. After all, it's a free-for-all in here. And things are liable to change. And that's what I'm looking for. Whoop. Alright. Almost got me, you bastard. Almost got me. And that was a misinput. Communist hellhole Solilobry has rather well-designed urban planning. Well, they did have a couple of decades to get things sorted. Or they just decided to preserve most of the original infrastructure and just slapped all those orbital cannons here and there. Oh, of course I kill myself by walking into a wall and then firing. Not done here. somewhere here. Somewhere here, I mean, dealing with this. What's this? It's a very, very good question. The kind of question that you ponder for a second and then decide it's not worth your attention, and you focus on the task at hand. Also explosions. You have to appreciate them, otherwise you are not one for this business. Looks like they got panic walls up. Strange, I don't remember any alarms being triggered. But I suppose that's not uncommon. We just need to blow up the power station and be done with that. But where is the power station? It's gotta be on the other side. But while we're here, yep, got that one. That one should also be a devote, right? Yep, just as I thought. You are, as they say, worthy of my grace. No homo. Yeah, not to make an impression. Just gonna blast through this wall. And by blast, I mean that in most literal sense. Like that. Like foam. Oh, that was a good landing. Yeah, looks like these bombers do count as enemy combatants. What I'm not a fan of are these turrets. But we can deal with those, can we, folks? Of course we can. Especially if you take into account those fuel lines which blow up rather nicely. Don't you think so? Of course you do. After all, it is part of you. God, I wish the one-year war mod for Gundam wasn't dead. Unfortunately, you know how it is with mods. They come and they go. And anything promising is yesterday news the moment you look away from it. It all depends on the community, really. But back where it all began, with a different angle in mind. So people do that. Nobody said you can do that. Me especially. So calm down your self-destructive tendencies and instead engage in something a bit more applicable to your stature. What is it? Statutory? You get what I mean. Stop trying to blow me up. That's always a good angle to have. But some people just don't want to go through it. Yep, just like Benito Mussolini said, I am against suicide. In the most practical of senses. Will these be... Nope, not too close enough. Guess we'll just keep firing. Oh, we're out of ammo. Well, good thing we haven't blown up that depot just yet. But once again, please remove yourself from my sight. Yeah, a shame we're the only people watching that show at the moment. Alas. Maybe things will be liable to change at some point. I know Matt and another friend of mine were interested in showing it, but sometimes the time is just not on my side. As is always the case with a lot of ADHD people, believe it or not. Minute detail. I think we got everything in here. One comms tower left, of course. And then we can skedaddle. Oh no, I'm getting hit by the deja vu from this. Because that was the exact same angle where I said that exact same word. Hopefully things will be different now. And I did not manage to kill myself by walking into a wall and then shooting. So now, there was not even enough of a, what was it? HP damage for that. Let's see if this sortie into the loop will get better. It obviously will. After all, we're engaging with corvids this time. What fun to be had. This is no longer a spacer neighborhood. However, let's prevent bits and shitification, especially in light of killdozers appearing here, because these are the corvid's elite shock troops. Wide, literally. But on the bright side, we got an entry over here, which we can use later. This used to be a nice neighborhood, as a coach once put it. Not seeing anyone else. Maybe they're just distributed across the map evenly, because there we go. Now they're starting to appear, be attracted to the south. They will take their time to get to here, so let's flank them. Ah. Think you're so smart, huh? Well, you ain't. I didn't think there will be a chocolate helicopter in this one, but there may be one in Brigadier Killers whenever it comes out from the early access. You gotta ask the devs on that one, or at least the lead dev. I cannot say that we're good friends with him, but I do appreciate his work deeply. Catch. Speaking of other similar games, I can always stream Synthetic, either 1 or 2. I know people love Synthetic 1, but I haven't heard much about Synthetic 2. Maybe with my help things will change in that regard. Again, not too fond of killdozers around here. That shot went wide. And that's a lot of killdozers. Looks like they got their whole shock corps in here to support an assault on this particular neighborhood. They really want it, or really are, against its gentrification. You, not me. But it's a good thing we can always change that. Sometimes gentrification is the better choice. But you didn't hear it from me. After all, as the saying by the Indian wise men went, by the people, of the people, but the people are retracted. Because I am pretty sure I cannot say the R word on Twitch or on YouTube just yet. Oh, and that reminds me, I should have changed the category on YouTube too at some point. But I think it's too late for that. As the saying goes, we'll see how the situation develops. And so far, it's been beneficial. A little bit closer. There we go. Now, can you stick the landing? Absolutely. Can we take them out in one volley? A little closer. There we go. And give me your energy. Because my shields can never be topped off. Or topped, for that matter. They're untoppable. Top of the line. Top. Top configuration, if you will. Alright, that's enough game jokes. Otherwise, I will start to sound even more fruity than people take me for. Skedaddle skedoodle. You will not plant your seed in my boo-boo. Now that sounded extra gay. It just kinda came out naturally, believe it or not. My brain do be working in mysterious ways these nights. Because half the time, or at least quarter of the time certifiably, I am not sure what the hell I am saying. Sometimes it's for the best, sometimes it's for the worst. Yes, I can beat the allegations if I try hard enough. That is the point of it all. Come on, there we go. Now we can move on. Because while I would like to deprive the Corvids of their entire shock killdozer core, they'll just recrew them after the battle is over, because that's how they roll. No, really. They got enough manpower to stuff all of their shit boxes they call vehicles twice over, maybe even thrice over. guess that's why they call it the Popular Revolution. And no Bradoon's gated community. Let's see and meet the let's meet and greet the neighbors. Oh, now that one's under proper management. We got ourselves some loyalists in the neighborhood, protecting the big man. Or at least what's left of the big man. Also cute. I think they can get me with the hover bikes. Oh, excuse me, crab bikes. That changes things a little bit. Elite troubadours or pantry boys? That's not enough, Jose. Not enough, I say. Same applies over here. What a principle. Nothing. Ooh. There's more of you pesky buggers. Everyone, and I do mean everyone, wants to be submissive and breathable, but what they do not understand in this line of work is that you still need your paperwork to be submitted and readable. In triplicate, corporate. In triplicate. Now, can I nail you from this angle? No, I don't think I can. Where were we? At the very least, we can no longer... We do not need to worry about the... what was it? The spicy calculators. Let's call them that, like Mandalore did. No longer. I'll just throw repurposed starship torpedoes at me. There we go. Good effect on target. And nothing over here besides some stragglers. Hey, who invited the paparazzi? This is a private party. No snooping around. Oh, and they even get the command vehicles in there. How cute. Can we get them before they sound the alarm? No. Unfortunately not. Panic walls go up, or at least they would if I hadn't blown up the substations. And the signal would have gone out for much longer if I had taken out the substations, but I made my bed, I prepared to lie in it, he shoots, he scores, and even dodges a hefty bullet. Another one of you, which I think I can deal with. One more shot. You don't need to sound that alarm anymore. It has been already sounded. I'll let you know how that went. Spoiler, it went nowhere. Now, if we were to go that direction, we would find a depot. A depot which we can blow up freely. And over that way. Yeah, lots of them snooping as usual. I wonder what's for dinner. Which is a great question because I am cooking my own dinner. However, that is always an open question, because sometimes I can just go, don't wanna. However, that unfortunately does not preclude me from losing any additional weight. Because once again, due to not being too physically active, I am still fat. Well, that and a number of other reasons, but we'll get into those as time goes on, and nobody needs to hear about that. At least at this time. I'm not famous enough for this kind of pillow talk just yet. Now, if you just stay over there and let me saturate this entire area, thank you kindly. Please come again for more business. You are our valued customer after all. I hate to lose you to someone who is less than committed to this entire operation. Now, sir, I understand you're a little bit angry, but thank you for staying with us. We are not a robot, and we will helpfully help you resolving this whole shebang. Yes, I do see there is a lot you'd like to complain about. However, let's go through the initial steps first. You tried turning it on and off again. You did. That's very good. That's very tech-savvy of you, good sir. Now tell me, have you managed to put it in an open space? You did. That's very good. You, sir, are a master at this practically. One final detail. Have you considered upgrading to our new and improved customer plan? Same amount of same amount of megabytes per second, but much cheaper and therefore easier on your wallet. We do this because we care about you. Oh, you would rather stay on your current plan? That's fine, that's fine. No need to rush things. Consider all of your current options and see if that's the best plan for you. Take everything into account, and we'll see where this all goes. Now, of course, regarding your current issue, would you like to see if this can be resolved by putting it in a different room entirely? Do you have enough of a cable length to put it in another room, or perhaps in the center of the room? Let's see here. Oh, wonderful. Now leave it at this point for at least a couple of days. Call us back later if there are no discernible changes to your internet speeds. Thank you, and have a nice day. Some traumas just run too deep. Now I say traumas like that was something else, but it was soul crushing to a degree. Also, I'm practically unemployable in that part of Europe because of low job retention skills, as they put it. That's a story for another time and day, which maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to discuss further down the line, if there are people willing to listen. Because you are not here for personal stories, you are here for Demolition Derby. And that is also what I'm here for, believe it or not. Happy times for all. I like to believe happy times are had even by those that were blowing up, because we are doing a service. But again, they are NPCs, so it's not exactly fair to them. But good times are being had by all. Oh, you'll love to see it. Absolutely love to see see it. Of course I had to call it down on myself. How could this happen to me? Maybe in just a little bit. I am a little bit exhausted at this point in the stream. However, even though I am done for tonight, I would like to thank you all for coming, and I will see you all tomorrow, where I will not forget to ping my friend with some additional help, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Goodbye.